Welcome back. You're watching CNN and this is Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Well, top aid groups working in Yemen are issuing a dire warning to the US government. Act now to stop the grueling war there or share the blame for the mass famine that's unfolding. The NGOs say if the fighting continues, 14 million Yemenis, half the country's population, are at risk of starving to death. CNN's Sam Kiley has more on the desperate pleas from those aid groups.
An electronic pulse tracks Naziha's battle with death. Her insides were torn out in an airstrike carried out by the Saudi-led coalition that supported and armed by the US and UK. The bombing killed 3 of her sisters and wounded 2 more in Hodeidah.
We are calling on all the honorable people of the world, all people from all religions, anyone who has a heart to stop this bloodshed. We cannot take it. Yemenis and their children are being murdered in cold blood.
A bipartisan bill that demands an immediate end to fighting and to the US support for Saudi Arabia's campaign is being considered by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and is getting support from 5 of the US biggest charities that are working in Yemen. They've published a joint letter calling for an end to support to Saudi Arabia and the UAE in the war.
The US has been, over the course of the conflict, over 3.5 years, involved in supporting the Saudi-led UAE-backed coalition in Yemen, and it has perpetuated the war. The US has been an arms broker while trying to be a peace broker, which is a difficult thing to do both.
At least 10,000 people have been killed in this war, many of them hit in airstrikes like this Saudi attack on a bus that killed dozens of children with an American bomb. The UN has called for a ceasefire, but there are no signs that the 2 biggest arms suppliers to Saudi Arabia, the US and UK, are going to join Denmark, Finland and Germany in stopping the flow of weapons. And while the war rages on, aid agencies say that 14 million people are threatened with famine. And the UN says 400,000 children are on the brink of starvation. Sam Kiley, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
Well, Joel Charny is the executive director of the Norwegian Refugee Council in the US. He signed that scathing letter alongside the CEOs of 4 other major aid groups working in Yemen. He joins me now from Washington. Good to have you with us. I just want to start by sharing a paragraph from that letter with our viewers, a letter that you signed that says, "We have no means left to avert a catastrophe in Yemen. Every humanitarian effort can no longer prevent mass starvation if the war is not brought to an end immediately." Now, this letter basically says, do something or be complicit. Be complicit. This is what these aid groups, yours included, are saying to the United States.
Yes, we're at a state of desperation, but it's not we who are most desperate. As you saw in that clip before, it's the people of Yemen. They're begging the world to do something. I've been part of a group that's been engaging at senior levels of the US government on this issue for over a year, and they continue to assure us that they're doing everything that they can. But we don't see any progress. We don't see an end to the bombing. We don't see an end to our difficulties in getting relief supplies in. The ports continue to be blocked. And fundamentally, unless this stops, hundreds of thousands of people are going to be at risk of famine. And we're saying to the US, now is finally the time to act.
And we have seen so many horrific pictures of children, toddlers starving to death. And I just want to alert our viewers to a recent report from Save the Children, which says 85,000 children may have died from hunger or disease since this war began. It says blockades in the port of the city of Hodeidah, as well as an increase in airstrikes, is making the delivery of aid extremely difficult. The group goes on to say that unlike children caught in the crossfire, children suffering from malnutrition and from famine have a chance to be saved. The big point here is this is a man-made crisis, right?
Absolutely. It's not weather related. In normal times, Yemen depends on food imports for 90% of its food needs, and the war has just completely disrupted the Yemeni economy. Another thing that hasn't been done is the payment of civil servants. So teachers, doctors, other medical workers who would normally have cash in their pocket to buy food, they don't have that cash. So we see an economy in free fall in addition to the impact of the conflict, and that's why we're facing a famine situation in the country.
And we know that peace talks are set to take place in early December in Sweden, and there's meant to be a vote calling for a 2-week ceasefire. I mean, that needs to happen straight away, right?
Absolutely. It needs to happen immediately. And again, what we're seeing from the U.S. and the reason for the letter fundamentally is that we see a divide or a schizophrenia within the U.S. government where we talk to people who say this ending the famine in Yemen is our top priority. We are doing everything that we can to stop the conflict. But then you get a statement from the president out of the White House a week ago that more or less gives a pass to the Saudis, not only on the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, but also a pass on their role in creating the famine situation in Yemen, the rationale being that Iran is the #1 enemy of the United States, Saudi Arabia is an ally, the Emiratis are allies, and it's more important that the U.S. maintain that allegiance as opposed to really giving a message that to the Saudis and the Emiratis that their conduct is unacceptable. Stopping the famine is indeed the #1 priority of the U.S. That message can work. We saw that last December when the president issued a statement asking the coalition to end the blockade of Hodeidah, and within a couple weeks they did that. We need a similar unequivocal message now related to all the causes of the famine that the Yemeni people are facing.
We have seen time and time again peace talks fail. They're meant to start up again soon. What can we expect, and how important is it to put the humanitarian disaster at the forefront of this?
The parties need to own their responsibility. It is not just the coalition, it's also the rebel forces as well. Everyone needs to focus on the humanitarian catastrophe that's looming and act in a way that is fundamentally responsible for and in solidarity with the condition of the Yemeni people. Whether we'll get that is difficult to predict. The pessimists have been right month after month. But what we're saying is the U.S. does have the power, does have the leverage to turn this situation around if it chooses to exercise that leverage.
All right, we'll see how this all plays out, but great to have you on. Incredible letter. I urge our viewers to read it as well. Joel Charny, thanks so much, Executive Director of the Norwegian Refugee Council in the U.S.
Thanks for having me.
Well, if you'd like to help the victims of famine in Yemen, you can head to our website under CNN Impact Your World. You can search for Yemen. We've put together a list of organizations helping to deliver critical food aid. Well, live from Atlanta, this is Connect the World. Still to come, scary moments at the U.S.-Mexico border as police use tear gas and riot shields to push migrants back. We're going to have a live report from the scene when we come back.